Welcome to IC English Literature class. Today we will be doing the poem Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. I've structured this lesson into 4 segments: background, setting, genre, explanation. We will begin with the background. As these dates suggest, Matthew Arnold was a Victorian poet, and the poem we are about to study is one of his finest lyrics. But in order to fully understand and appreciate this poem, we need to know first something about the general mood and temper of the Victorian age, that is, the age in which Arnold lived and wrote. This was a time when certain developments had brought science into direct conflict with religion. Charles Darwin's theory of the origin of species had shaken people's faith in God. The creation of man, according to Darwin, was a slow process of evolution. He traced man's origin to the apes. This theory ran counter to the religious belief at that time, which held that God made man out of clay and created him in his own image. Thus, there was a clash between Darwin's theory and the Christian doctrine. The two explanations were at odds. They were opposed to each other, and this led to what has been described as a crisis of faith. At this time, a great number of people were confused and disturbed. This conflict had deprived man of peace, of a sense of security, and most importantly, the spiritual strength that had sustained him in times of difficulty and misfortune. It is this crisis of faith which is at the center, at the very heart of Dover Beach. In this poem, Arnold has used the imagery of the sea to give expression to people's declining faith and its consequences. Some of these consequences were a deep sense of loss, restlessness, a vague sense of sadness and disquiet. The poet uses the sea as a metaphor for religious faith. There was a time when faith, like the sea, was at full tide and sustained mankind. But now that tide is seen to be receding, leaving mankind insecure, exposed, and completely vulnerable. So this is the backdrop, this backdrop of insecurity, uncertainty, against which we will study the poem Dover Beach. Now we move to the second segment, which is the setting. The poem was inspired by Arnold's visit to the south coast of England, where the cliffs of Dover can be seen along the English coastline. These are the shingles on the beach. There's a reference to that in the poem. And that is the English Channel. And across the English Channel on the other side is the French coast. There's a reference to that as well in the poem. And these are the white cliffs of Dover. They're white because they're made of chalk or limestone. So that is the setting of the poem. Now the third part, the genre or the classification of the poem. Now, this poem is considered to be a dramatic monologue. Now, as the word monologue suggests, it's a speech or a narration by a single speaker. But in a dramatic monologue, that speech is addressed to a person in the poem whose presence is felt, but who does not utter a word. In other words, it is addressed to a silent listener. And there's ample evidence of a silent listener in this poem when Arnold invites his companion to come to the window. At another time, he invites her to come and listen to the sound of the sea. So this speech by a single person addressed to a listener in the poem, a silent listener, makes this piece of work a dramatic monologue. So we have done the first 3 parts, the background, the setting, and the genre. And the fourth part, that is the explanation, will be continued in part 2. Thank you.